Let's talk about a different kind of activism now, more of the legal variety, just as important. And we have with us Amanda Berman, who is the third different person in the short history of this show to come on from the Lawfare Project, which is doing incredible work at the lawfareproject.org if you want to check them out. This is Amanda Berman, the Lawfare Project Director of Legal Affairs, about a new lawsuit that was just filed regarding the anti-Semitism at San Francisco State University. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about the situation at San Francisco State and the lawsuit that you have just filed.
Sure. Well, the situation is pervasively hostile. There's really no other way to describe it. Jewish students are treated differently from every other student group. Minority groups have free reign really on the campus, but Jewish students aren't considered minorities, and they're treated really like they don't have equal rights, but the university gives so much extra special attention to minority groups while saying the Jewish students have too much power, they have too much access to the president, they take up a disproportionate amount of time with conversations at the school. The president has made statements saying essentially that he can't say unequivocally that Zionists are welcome on campus. He doesn't know what Zionists are. He says that Zionism means the right to be Jewish, the right of a Jew to be Jewish. So by his own understanding of the term, Jews who want to be Jewish are not necessarily welcome at San Francisco State. And, you know, coming from the highest levels of the administration, this anti-Semitism has really affected the lives of Jewish students and also Jewish community members who come to the university because, of course, universities are places where there should be a marketplace of ideas, where people should be allowed to engage and have difficult discussions and learn from each other. But that's not what's happening there. There's only one side of every story that's being presented, and it's the side of whatever group is the loudest and most violent.
So it's not. It's not so different from the kind of. It's not so different from the situation we've seen at Evergreen State, for example, where they kowtow essentially to minority students, and that includes Muslim and Arab students who tend to be the most vocal in terms of anti-Israel work, correct?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately that it is similar to what's going on at San Francisco State, and, you know, we don't have any desire to silence any other group, and certainly not to target them because of their religion or national origin. So, you know, it's less for me about what the other people stand for as it is for the fact that Jewish students are simply treated differently. They're not entitled to the same benefit. Well, they are entitled. They're not given access to the same benefits and privileges as everyone else on campus because there are these really loud groups that you know, are ruling the campus. It's truly mob rule. The university is afraid to get involved, and they say whoever's the loudest and the most violent, that's who's going to win the fight. And it happens that on this campus, the university also really seems to stand strongly with the language that's coming from GUPS, the General Union of Palestine Students, which is supported by the College of Ethnic Studies. The president has said that he thinks GUPS is, quote, the very purpose of this great university, and that GUPS gives him the courage to tell other community groups to mind their own business. So, of course, that's a thinly veiled reference to Jewish groups, community groups who are concerned about the rights of Jews on campus.
Before we get to the April 2016 incident, can you tell us a little bit about San Francisco State? Is it commuter? Is it a largely Asian student body? I know they have an Asian American president. I guess his name is Leslie Wong. What are the characteristics of this? Obviously, Berkeley is Berkeley, and it's a place that attracts a lot of liberals and a lot of people who aren't even students there. I mean, Berkeley, the reality is a lot of them are hardworking pre-meds. It's a top-notch school. I don't think San Francisco State's necessarily at the same level. But is it even people on campus, or is it outside agitators who are drawn to San Francisco and the liberal life out there? Just tell us more about San Francisco State, which on the East Coast we just don't hear about much.
Sure. I don't, to be honest, know the demographics of the student population in terms of the Asian students or, you know, the size of the groups there. I know the Jewish students make up, I think, about 8% of the student population, which, of course, is relatively small. And I have been told that it was a commuter campus, but now I don't think it's considered that anymore. I don't, frankly, know if there is a known definition of a commuter campus, or whether
right.
at some point, you know, if more students are not commuters, then it's no longer a commuter campus. But it is certainly a very liberal campus. It's certainly a place, I mean, San Francisco has always been a place where there's provocative voices and protests, and there's a pretty hard left out there that rules the day.
Well, only since
I
the
see
60s.
no problem with liberalism on college campuses. I think liberalism is totally fine. I think conservatism is totally fine. I think the most important thing is that everyone's allowed to express their views. That's really, you know, the heart of the matter.
And talk about how specifically Jewish students, or really pro-Israel students, there are plenty of Christian Zionists who I think this probably applies to, have been shut down from expressing their views. I guess it seems like intimidation from what I read in the complaint.
It's more than intimidation. There is certainly a component of that. There is harassment, there's intimidation, there's targeting. Sometimes there are near assaults that have occurred. There are threats, direct death threats, honestly, from members of GUFS and others who are related to GUFS in this whole intersectionality narrative, which I'm happy to go into later. But that's coming from the student population, which is problematic and can in some circumstances contribute to this overall pervasively hostile environment. But in order to bring a lawsuit, you have to see state action. You have to see the university complicit in the commission of the civil rights violations. And we have that in this case, I think, pretty unequivocally. We see the university constantly supporting and reiterating the rights of the anti-Israel students and the anti-Semitic students at the expense of the rights of the Jewish students. Now, there may very well be Christian Zionists on campus. Again, I don't know the demographics well enough to tell you that.
I doubt they'd be drawn to San Francisco in the first place, of all places to go if I'm a Christian Zionist.
I think that's fair. I was going to say, you know, those are not the people who are targeted. The people who are targeted are quite simply the Jews. And it's obvious to anyone who reads this complaint, and I really encourage your listeners. I mean, it's a long piece of work. It's 76 pages, I believe, but it really kind of reads like a story, or so I've been told by people who read it, because when you're really in it and you're understanding what's going on, and you're hearing from the students and the adult plaintiffs that are involved, and you hear from the administrators the words out of their mouths, essentially saying that the Barkat disruption was a Jewish conspiracy, that the mayor came to elicit this exact reaction from the disruptors in order to, quote, galvanize the Jewish American community for political support. So, you know, this is what Jewish students are facing. Administrators whose anti-Semitic slurs really can't quite be believed. I mean, some of the things that come out of the administration are straight out of the pages of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
It's amazing.
And that's been explained.
It's amazing to me.
Sorry.
Having read, also, let me point out that if people are a little intimidated by the 70 or however many pages, there's an excellent summary of the action at the beginning. So you can digest, you know, it's a little more bite-sized 3-4 pages where you really get the idea of what's going on. But having read through this, it's amazing some of the things that actually came out of administrators' mouth. I mean, frankly, students and the people who pretend they're students who hang around these places, you expect it from them. I mean, they're so silly. It's not the students of 90 years ago, whatever. These people are fools. But administrators, people who are good at CYA, if you know what I mean, I'm amazed. Some of the things that allegedly came out of their mouth.
Yeah, I was too.
Makes your case easier.
I'm sorry?
Makes your case easier, that's for sure.
It does, and I was just going to say, I was asked this morning by another reporter why we waited so long after the Barkat disruption to file the lawsuit, and I said, honestly, you know, litigation is always the last recourse. You always want to solve a problem diplomatically, and you always want to, you know, make sure that the people who are involved understand the extent of the problem before you sue someone. You know, You hope not to expend the time or the resources on a long and public legal battle. But over the course of the last year, since I've been investigating this university, these things have been coming out every couple of weeks. I mean, there's truly another anti-Semitic slur coming out of the statement, or another incident of targeting Jewish students, either members of AEPI or Hillel, or
what does that mean? Like, what specifically has happened in terms of that, even outside San Francisco State? Just for people who don't know what some of the situations are that you're dealing with.
Well, there's a really strong movement to silence voices with which certain members of the American population disagree. And first of all, it really undermines the First Amendment. And I would also encourage your listeners to check out the testimony of several really prominent members of the legal community this morning before the Senate Judiciary Committee. There was a hearing on campus free speech issues, and the different issues that are happening around the country where speakers are being invited to universities and are being shut down or silenced, and there are mobs that are rioting, like at Berkeley with the Ann Coulter event and the Milo event. I mean, these things are happening all the time, and I'll tell you honestly, I don't think our case has so much to do with the Ann Coulter and Milo situations, because Jewish students are not provocateurs. They're not out there, you know, to do speaking engagements themselves or to make money or for their careers. All they want to do is go to college and be normal kids. I mean, these are kids who came to school to, you know, meet people of the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever they want, to have fun, to go to parties, join fraternities, go to class, learn, decide a major, pursue a career. This is what these kids came to school for, and not three of them are, you know, finishing school or in their last couple of years of school serving as a plaintiff in a federal lawsuit. Nobody wants to do that. But when you have no choice, you have no choice.
Couldn't they say, well, you know, it's a controversial political topic. They're not being attacked for just being Jewish, just so long as they stay out of politics. And obviously this is not my view. I'm just playing devil's advocate. No one's harassing Jewish students just going to class. This is people who, you know, hey, we've suffered. Our relatives in Palestine have been victimized. How dare you, you know, try to suppress us, you know, if you're not actually at an Israel event. I mean, well, you can explain it from here. You know what I'm getting at.
I do, and it's a really great point. First of all, I wish it was true that these kids were not getting targeted when they're walking to class. I really wish that was true. And in the complaint, you'll see there are so many instances where Jewish students are texting each other saying, don't wear anything that identifies you outwardly as a Jew. Tuck in your Star of David. Don't wear a yarmulke. Don't wear your AEPI letters. I mean, they're afraid to go to class. They take these circuitous routes from their homes to their classrooms because there may be a GUPS event or a Muslim Students Association event happening on campus where they're chanting genocidal chants against Jews or calling for intifada or saying that Jews are killing Arab babies. These are the things that these students are facing on a regular basis. But to answer your question more directly, one of my clients posted on Facebook an article that was covering this lawsuit, and somebody wrote on it saying, oh, Jewish students are afraid, but what about the fear of Palestinians whose homes are being razed by Israeli Defense Forces or something like that? And, you know, my client was upset, which is a really reasonable reaction to something like that, because it really proves the extent of the problem. For someone to believe that a Jewish student, and this is answering the question about whether this is political, because to me this is not political at all. For someone to say that a Jewish student, just by virtue of his Jewish identity, should be targeted on a California university campus because of some policies that may or may not exist 10,000 miles away is purely anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
it's not political.
We hear the other.
Are targeted. I'm sorry?
I said we hear the other side, like, God forbid you associate a terrorist attack like the one in Jerusalem a few days ago with Islam in general, even though it's been going on for 1,400 years. Could you imagine the protests? Yet they're just picking. And you know what's funny, by the way, Amanda? Like, I'm sure there are plenty of anti-Israel protesters there. I mean, San Francisco has a big far-left community, and a lot of them are Jewish. That's the irony of it. There probably are some Jewish students who are among the anti-Israel protesters, no?
Yeah, there probably are. I think that's, frankly, a totally separate issue, and it is a problem. There are Jewish groups on, well, I think there's one that recently came on campus and wasn't there previously that has a Jewish-sounding name, and a lot of people think it's a Jewish group, and it's really not, and there are members of its board of directors that are openly hostile to Jewish people and the Jewish state. So that's really another very complex issue. but I agree with you, to target an individual because of his religion and say that, you know, he's responsible for the whole religion or the state where that religion is safe, where members of that religion go and consider it a historic national homeland, is just the worst kind of stereotyping and the worst kind of targeting and discrimination. So we shouldn't be doing it with anyone. We shouldn't be ascribing an entire religion to anyone, in my opinion, but I don't understand why we would ever deny that there is a component within Islam that is participating in, you know, in a more radical form of their religion. I mean,
sure.
you know, this is where it does become a little bit political, and, you know, I'm more than happy to have this conversation, but I don't think that it's so relevant to this case, because this case is just about discrimination against people because they are Jewish.
Yeah, we only have another minute or two left with Amanda Berman, who is at the lawfareproject.org. But maybe you could just summarize what happens now, what you expect to happen over the next months or even years.
Sure. You know, our ultimate goal is to make sure that the California State San Francisco campus, San Francisco State University, is a welcoming and safe environment for Jews. It's really simple. I think it sounds a little bit too broad to really grasp onto, and I really understand that. I wish I could say more. I mean, ultimately, it's up to my clients to determine what they think is necessary in terms of institutional change. But I think we can all agree, and I think that anyone who reads this complaint or follows the situation there, and I'll tell you, the floodgates have opened. We've gotten stories from past students and past professors who are corroborating a lot of facts in the complaint. I think anyone who's following this story realizes that there is no option other than institutional change. And that could take a lot of forms, and those are the things that we will address in the next couple of months. But, you know, I really have to say that this has been in my hands for the last 14 months, since April 6th of last year. And today is the first day. This is out of my hands. It's up to the university to decide how they want to respond. It's up to California State University system and up to the administration of San Francisco State and their attorneys. And we look forward to hearing from them and seeing what the next steps will be.
Finally, how do people follow you and follow, I guess, Ben, Brooke, and the others doing great work at the Lawfare Project?
Thanks for saying that. You can visit our website. It's www.thelawfareproject.org. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and we're just the Lawfare Project. There will be lots of coverage. We will, of course, be posting this interview and lots of other interviews, and you know, we really encourage you to follow, and I thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for the great work that you and the others there are doing. Thanks for coming on today.
No problem. My pleasure.